Good morning, film warriors. I think that's what I'm going to call you for the rest of the semester. Film warriors. First period warriors. After you saw Jodorowsky's Dune, you know the word warrior has a much larger significance than perhaps you thought it did. I know that's how I felt when I watched it for the first time. There are 5 of you that have submitted this so far. I haven't read a single one of them, but I'll read them tomorrow. I've been at my mom's um, all weekend on account of Mother's Day, so I haven't had a chance to read the sadly only 5, but I bet you those are 5 really good ones. Um, let's see how many of you watched the previous episode, or at least saw this and hit like. Thank you, Carissa. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Rhiannon. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, Janine. Let's look at the YouTube channel over here. Look at where my stats are. And I gotta tell you, my stats are weak. Film class had 7 people watch it, and there were 8 of you that liked it, but only 7 watched it. It's not as bad as my journalism class, which has not gotten a single view. What can I say? I went to school to be a teacher, not a YouTuber, but now those careers are converging, and I don't think going forward that those of us who are in education can risk not being able to not just be educators of content and skills, but we also have to be creators of content. So, that being said, here's the latest assignment that I created for you. All right, we're going to watch the first episode of The Real History of Science Fiction. It'll look like that. You click on it, you hit play. It's 42 minutes long, so you should be able to finish it within one class period. And I'll tell you, as it says here, let me blow it up using special effects. One of the hallmarks of science fiction is how it mirrors the human experience through future advancements in technology. The reflections on various elements of humanity reveal much about our current conditions. I love the science fiction genre. It's the genre that I loved when I was a kid, and it brought imagination to my world. And it allowed, like it allows all of us, to live not just other lives, because all fiction does that, but to live with the prospect of something in the future. And you'll notice that the majority of films in the genre of science fiction that deal with either artificial intelligences or machine intelligences, so called robots, deal with that future and what the future could be like, will be like, would be like. We hope it's not like, whatever it is, right? All of this is possible through science fiction in a way that it is not possible through other genres. And if we look at our course syllabus in the Visions of the Future mini unit, I was going to show you clips of 21 different films that I was hoping to get to. One of them is a documentary that I couldn't show you. Obviously, I can't show you any of these mostly because we're not in class. I was able to find Jodorowsky's Dune online, but I cannot find Metropolis for you to watch, Things to Come for you to watch, and then I don't have any clips from the rest of these films that I'd like for you to see. Especially, I wanted us to see films that depicted the future, because the way that we as a society, as a culture, as a species of humanity envision our future absolutely tells us a little bit more about our present and how we feel about that present. Going back to Fritz Lang's super seminal film Metropolis, of which there's a poster in my classroom right behind my desk, where he created a lot of what we see and society sort of sees as a future, with the way he depicted the city of the future, the first robots and whatnot. The design of C3PO is based on the design of the principal robot in Metropolis. Things to Come, which was an adaptation of an H.G. Wells story where he envisioned what would happen in the world for the next 100 years. Now, this is 1936 when this movie comes out, and it was written prior to. But one of the things that is predicted in it is a vast global conflict, which would happen just years after this, which was the Second World War, and how humanity would deal with that and move forward. Buck Rogers was a comic strip in the 1920s and 30s, particularly in the 1930s, excuse me. And it was so popular that it became a serial. A serial is essentially what we now know as a TV show or a YouTube channel, where you have episodes that are brief this week, and then next week there's going to be another episode that's brief. They used to do that in movie theaters. They were called serials, and Buck Rogers was one of the first. It was about a pilot that gets frozen in time and wakes up in the 24th century. Lots has changed in the 21st century. So many of these films, and these are from all over the world. For example, La Decima Vittima, The 10th Victim, is an Italian film about a future where when you grow to age 25, you are able to get $1 million. But the problem in getting that $1 million is you have to kill 10 people. Strange film, but very telling about how we see our sort of game show culture now, right? Alphaville, which is right beneath that, is a French film by the great Jean-Luc Godard, who makes kind of a film noirish type of movie about the future where a robot is in charge of everything. Machine intelligence. THX 1138 is George Lucas's first film about the future, about another totalitarian regime that has made people essentially into robots. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. It's the fourth of the Planet of the Apes films, my favorite. It's not probably the most iconic, but it's one that's most telling, because it really deals with racial divisions that were all over America during this time period. Soylent Green, the famous Soylent Green, a film about the future and overpopulation and pollution and whatnot, that has an incredible, very famous ending. Escape from New York, where the cities of the future are just made into prisons. And then a film that we were going to watch in depth and study was Blade Runner, made by Ridley Scott. It's an adaptation of a novel by Philip K. Dick called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. This movie is incredible. Another amazing film, The Road Warrior. It's a sequel to a film called Mad Max, about a post-apocalyptic future. And this is one of the very first films that envisioned a world after a nuclear war. This is 1982, so we're in the middle of the Cold War here. The famous, we are at the drop of a button before society ends. That's what that time was. And so Australian director and writer George Miller created this series of films about what a post-apocalyptic Australia would look like. Brazil is another classic of the genre from the 80s. um, Very similar to THX 1138 in terms of a totalitarian regime where everything is outlawed, including emotion. Red Dawn is an interesting film also from the Cold War, which envisions a time where we are invaded by Russia and Cuba, and everybody must take up arms in guerrilla warfare throughout the streets of Main Street, USA. The Running Man, adapted from a Stephen King story about a future where crime was punished by being on a game show where you would essentially die, and if you lived, your crime was pardoned. Arnold Schwarzenegger was in this. It was directed by Paul Michael Glacier, who was an actor, and this film absolutely erased kind of the blurred line between game show, reality show, and reality itself. It envisioned a future where everybody was obsessed with this reality show program / game show called The Running Man. Outstanding film to sit and watch. Has some great one-liners from Arnold Schwarzenegger in the middle of his 80s heyday. Ghost in the Shell, the original Ghost in the Shell, was a Japanese animated film that really went into depth about the connection between humanity and artificiality, and how at some point that line blurs with the advancement of technology. The film Battle Royale here was about an adaptation of a really powerful novel about the future of education, in which it also becomes a game show, a violent one. And the last film that I had on here was Children of Men, a film by Alfonso Cuarón that envisions a future where people no longer are able to reproduce and haven't been able to reproduce for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, a child is born. The future is a mess. And that's kind of a recurring theme, the future being a mess. So this unit that we would have had, unfortunately, there's no one documentary that covers all of it. Instead, much like Visitors from Space and Time, it is covered in pieces. So I'll ask that you please hit play on this, answer these two brief questions, and we'll talk about them in your comments. Take care. We will talk to you next time. As usual, please hit like so that I know you saw this. Stay safe.